Hello, this is Danny Smith, and this is the What About Books podcast. I've got Tony Cubbage. Tony is on our leadership team at Home Vantage. How you doing today, dude?
I'm wonderful, better than I deserve. Thank you.
You know, the other day we talked about, we were going through a mastermind on John Maxwell's 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth and talked about our next book. And you, across the table, said 7 Habits. You're a big 7 Habits guy, right?
Yeah, I was exposed to it years ago through my bride. She took it through an executive course, and I saw some principles take effect and read the book and didn't do anything with it, to be honest with you. And then in my current career, 15 years in lending, first things first, begin with the end in mind, be proactive. All those things come in very handy.
Yeah, I'm on a new kind of a leadership management training program that I've engaged in for a year. And was on a meetup with a big group yesterday. We were all introducing ourselves, and I mentioned my age and what I'm doing the next 5 years. And one guy popped up and said, Danny, 67 years old, it's great to see somebody your age. He meant it as a compliment, I think. He said, you're somebody your age sharpening the saw, which, you know, is one of the 7 habits, right?
Last one.
Yeah. And so I have not read the 30th anniversary edition. I bought it yesterday, and it looks like Sean Covey has written it, done some editing and updated a little bit. You haven't read the new edition, have you?
No, I have not. So from what I can see, you know, he's got fresh insights from his son. But a lot of people get that confused. Stephen is the father, Sean is the son.
Yeah. And there's also a Stephen M.R. Covey that's a son. And he's the author of the book Speed of Trust that we've talked about. Mm-hmm. We use a lot of their behaviors in some of the training. But yeah, there's Sean, Stephen M.R. Stephen M.R. is the oldest. And then Dr. Covey is kind of what I call this guy. Now, you said something. We were talking yesterday or day before, and that Knox, your son, he's 8.
He's 9 now.
He's 9 now. So you've got something on the wall around the 7 habits, and he gets upset with you for.
You probably would chastise me for talking about it, but hey, it's a great example and people need to hear it. So luckily for us in his school, they have interwoven into their curriculum the 7 habits from kindergarten through 5th. Now, I would say those early elementary kids, they're not aware of it. They do the exercises, but it's not until they get to 4th and 5th grade does it start to really ring a bell. But to answer your question, you know, in 1st grade, you know, he's in 4th now, but in 1st grade, they gave us a printout, a large printout, probably 20 by 40, a little bit big. So we put it in the wall in the kitchen, just as a reminder. And there are times, even to this day, that he'll come up to me, ask me a question, be struggling with something, and I'll just smile and I'll look over to the board. And he'll look at me. He gets so miffed. And then I'm like, well, which one of these habits are we going to use to work through the process, right? And you know, if I ask him today, you know, can you tell me the 7 habits? No. But if I start repeating them, he'll get them. But for me, I will tell you the framework that this provides, these 7 habits they're more of a principle-centered approach. You know, they give you the security to adapt to change and take advantage of opportunities. I mean, to me, that's kind of what this framework is about.
So let's back up. So this is, your school that Knox goes to, Summit Christian Academy, and So they actually, it is the 7 habits, not something they've adapted. It is the 7 habits.
Correct. It is the 7 habits. The principal has interwoven it into their curriculum. They have a workbook from kindergarten on, and they work through it, and they carry that workbook with them through all 5, or I guess in this case, through 5th grade. And so you can see you can see their progression. And the idea is that when they move forward and go into middle school, they use that framework, to go from dependent to independent.
Right. Now, is this something that Scott McLeod brought in and did, or somebody else was already there before Scott came in? Do you know?
No, to correct you there, the previous school had it. Now we put them in a private school. They do not have it, but they have other, plenty of other self-development.
Okay. All right. Very cool.
Yeah.
That's wow. What a great education.
It's fantastic. Those kids, I will tell you, the rumor is the principal that feeds into the middle school from that particular public school has said in the past that the kids that come out of this particular school, when they get to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they are much more prepared mentally and emotionally than other peers. So, I don't think the kids fully understand, but they certainly get the gist, and they are applying. I will tell you, we had this conversation last night. As a parent, the many goals, but the goal is to take your child from dependent, right? The language of you, I'm dependent on you, to independent, where it's I, hey, look what I can do, to interdependent, where it's more, the vernacular changes to we. It's about we can do this. And I think that's really inside of that framework of Covey, or the 7 habits, is the ancillary benefit of walking through this.
Yeah, that's wow. It's encouraging to hear that's going on. So let's kind of go. I mean, do you have a favorite habit, Tony?
I think the habits change based on the need.
Yeah.
For years, when I read through all of them, they all strike a chord. If I was to gravitate towards one, it really is begin with the end in mind. So in every step, you mentioned a lot in our talks about vision, goal, purpose, and not just for your own life, but in every step of what you're trying to accomplish along the way. But I will tell you, beginning with the end in mind, the ability to see the vision, know your why, take the time. In business, you want to take the time to do it right the first time, so that you can wipe your hands clean and concentrate on more ROI.
Yeah, let me just run through them real quick for our audience. So got notes laid out here. So we've got habit number 1, be proactive. Number 2, begin with the end in mind. Number 3, put first things first. Number 4, think win-win. Number 5 is seek to understand, then to be understood. Number 6, synergize. And number 7, sharpen the saw. When I remember having this book for the first time, and it had to have been around 1980 because of where I lived for a few years. It had to have been around 87. I'm going to say no, not 1990.
Okay.
And it was a hard book to read. It was one of those books I could only, for whatever reason. Now I've grown a lot, since then, 37 years. and or 27 years, I guess, 30, however many years. But um, um, it was a hard book to read. Dr. Covey was professor. This came out of years of work in his classes, and over the years I've read some dummied down versions, but all of this stuff is it's interwoven into the whole leadership world. I just look through this, and some of it I can see it relates back to somebody like Napoleon Hill and Dale Carnegie back in the early 1900s. But then others I can see where John Maxwell has reiterated, written a book on think win-win. He got a couple of books that it's all about really that habit. So Covey has made a real mark in the world with this book.
Yeah, I would say I would agree with you. When I first read it, some of it resonated and others I just glossed over, didn't. But as you work through it, not the first or second time, but you will see almost every interaction you can pull one of these 7. And you mentioned a minute ago, seek first to understand, then be understood. I don't know if you can see this. You see that?
Yeah.
So it says talking stick,
and
it says seek first to understand, then understood. It sits right on my desk. And I put that there because I think a lot of people, when someone's talking to me without reading this book, I think initially you're either speaking or waiting to speak. So you might be listening, but you already have your response prepared and ready to go for the pause in the conversation. But I think when you try to understand first, then be understood, it has the ability to, you have to listen with intent. So be intentional on your listening. So there is no response. I'm simply listening. And then based on that conversation, I'm responding accordingly, which is a learned trait.
Yeah, it is. What's that? I've got 2 ears and 1 mouth thing. I'm looking through this, and of course either he did or Sean. I think it was actually Sean that wrote a book called First Things First. A few years later, and I'd actually forgotten until I pulled this back out and we were going to talk about it, that it was one of the habits was put first things first. I wonder if he had a hard time putting these in order. Yeah. You ever thought about how he come up with the order? And
now that's a great question. It seems like they're in perpetual order, but the last one is synergize, right? And when everybody's pushing and pulling in the same direction, you're speaking without words. That's synergizing, but it doesn't happen without the other things in place.
Well, amen to that. Looking at that first things first, and I think he's updated in the updated version. So as we go through this, we're going to be talking more about this on other podcasts. Just to let the audience know. And we've actually got a mastermind that we're going to record and post. That'll happen next week. But I don't remember the 1, 2, 3, 4, the urgent, not urgent, important. I use that all the time. You see me, I'm sure, draw it on the board. We're trying to prioritize things, but I don't remember the titles. The urgent and important is the procrastinator. Not urgent and important is the prioritizer. The not important urgent is the yes man. And the not important, not urgent is slacker. That is really cool.
Yeah, it looks like he broke that down into, like you said, time management. there's basically four different ways on 2 factors that we spend our time, urgent and important.
So I guess if you spend most of your time in urgent and important things, you're a procrastinator. That's what he's saying. There's crises, emergency meetings, last minute deadlines. Of course, I know from the book, and I've spent as much time in the book, First Things First, as I have in the 7 Habits, actually. But it's you want to be operating in, ideally, I want to be operating in category 2. I'm doing
you prioritize.
Yeah, prioritize. And stay out of the urgent. My mentor taught me to be busy, Danny, but don't be in a hurry all the time. And Darren Hardy talks about the prioritization and what you double down on and what you dump and what you delete. And he's just using some different words out of this habit number 3, I know. So,
well, you mentioned something really neat there about the procrastinator is always in crisis mode, right? So it's always late, running behind. Think about that for a moment. In that frenzy of a situation, anytime those, you're in a crisis or emergency meeting or last minute deadline or an unforeseen event, you're completely reactionary. There you have no control, and there are no intangibles that you can control. And so to operate out of reaction, I'm not sure it would be possible to do anything else.
If all you're doing is reacting, if everything's a fire, you're burning, other things are being burnt. Kind of got when you said that, I thought I had my phone off, and my phone went on, and there was somebody texted me about something that somebody else is supposed to be working on. That's now a fire, and that was a perfect timing. So it drew me away from what you were saying when I saw that, and I thought, so that's one of those things that's been important but not urgent. That's now become an important and urgent task that's going to take things away from other things that's planned to get done, right? Got about 6 minutes here. I'm just looking through these notes, and
I would say I'm looking at the win-win habit number 4.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. Yeah.
And I would, and I do this probably less as a parent and more as in the business world when I'm dealing with clients. The ultimate goal is both parties win, right? Meaning, what does win mean? I mean, the win is, what matters most is they get what they want. And whether it's in the mortgage world, for example, rate, payment, product, in the athletic world, it could be, a championship or a different goal, a personal goal inside there. The interesting thing about the win-win is when no one can agree and you can't find a solution that benefits both of you, then you can certainly disagree agreeably. And I think a lot of times people, when you're negotiating something, you have your parameters that you're coming from. The other individual has theirs, and it's finding that common ground And win-win is the ultimate goal. But in order to find that common ground, you have to go back through the other habits. You have to listen to what they're saying. You have to be proactive in your questions in order to get to a win-win.
Yeah. When he's in the notes here, he says, or in the book, he says, people with this, under win-win or no deal, if we can't find a solution that benefits both of us, we agree to disagree agreeably. I love that. And
yeah,
versus somebody with win, people with this mentality don't necessarily want someone else to lose. What matters most is that they get what they want. It's go back to that win-win or no deal. If we can't find a solution that benefits us both, we agree to disagree agreeably. We were in a negotiation. You were involved in it last year, and it came down to some negotiations. And we'll give this. I said no. I said, y'all. We said here's what it takes to win, but we want to be sure it works for both parties. You came back and started negotiating. Remember that in the negotiation process, and they undercut, and we're going, wait a minute. And I can tell you right now, that right there is the reason that I walked away from that deal. But we had a hard time for a while. And it's not that I'm trying to be a harmonizer and please everybody, but they wouldn't agree to disagree agreeably. And I hadn't even thought about that until just now. But I mean, they literally, and so I ended up laying out some things I said. I said, you told me the numbers worked out and that the numbers on this deal worked out. Then you came in and lowballed us. And well, wait a minute. Well, we're not going to walk away because of this. But so in the end, I don't agree. I don't believe that we agreed to disagree agreeably because that's. I mean, when I buy a car, the last 3 cars I bought, I still drive I drive a 1997 Ford F-250 diesel, so I don't buy vehicles very often. I bought a couple other vehicles since then, but I still have that old thing. But I don't do the negotiation back and forth. I look at it, salesman calls me back and we talk about it, but it's I'm looking at, so anyway, with Tony,
hey, before we cut it off, let's definitely get to habit number 7 about sharpening the saw.
Yeah, go for it.
So in the book, there's a nice little back and forth there. But it kind of goes like this. The guy's sawing down a tree. He's like, what are you doing? I'm sawing a tree. He's like, you look beat. Looks like hard work. He's like, I am. How long have you been at it? He's like, 5 hours. He's like, whew, it's hard work. He's like, why don't you take a break and we'll sharpen the saw. Sure, it'll go a lot faster. And then he's like, I don't have time to sharpen the saw. I'm too busy sawing. And sharpen the saw is not simply about practicing something over and over. This one, it surrounds all the other habits in the paradigm, and it makes all of the others possible.
Yeah, I'm a big sharpen the saw guy. I mean, I think about in the book, the 12-week year, about high productivity. Darren Hardy's got a productivity program called Insane Productivity, and it is insane. But Hardy, Moran, and Moran and Leadington with the 12-week year, you block out 2 or 3 hours a week one block at a time during your work day, during the week, to sharpen the saw. And it's and I'm using that. They don't use that word, but use that word. It's a huge deal. We're going to talk a lot more about this.
Yeah, I do want to read this last pass on sharpening the saw, and I'll just quote it here because it's so good. I mean, we've talked about this on separate conversations about change, creating habits, how to self-development, better yourself. We talk about the real change that comes from inside out, and that's the focus of this book, is empowering you and giving you tangible options to manage your life. So, for example, I'm going to quote, real change comes from the inside out. It doesn't come from hacking at the leaves of an attitude and behavior with quick fixes. It comes from striking at the root, the fabric of our thought, and the fundamental essential paradigms. This gives definition to our character and creates a lens through which we see the world. I don't think I could have said it any better.
No, that's that lens. We all have a lens we look at. We all have a worldview, right? So, yeah, we're good. Well, Tony, we'll pick this back up. I'm sure you and I'll have some, jibber jabber back and forth and beat this up on other calls. And I'm sure Tony and Austin and Brett, a couple of them will get tired of hearing us talk about this, maybe, but maybe they'll start sharpening the saw, because it's a game changer. And but we'll pick this back up on the mastermind next week with some of the other guys. All right.
Well, I've enjoyed it. I appreciate you inviting me. Thank you so much, and all the best to you.
All right. See you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.